Good evening and welcome to The Cage on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Brad Wharton and I'm joined in the studio tonight by Aundre Jacobs and Mick. Gentlemen, great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Good to be back.
We've got a packed show today, obviously UFC 142 coming up very, very shortly. What are your thoughts on the card as a whole?
I think up the top end you've got at least three. The top five are pretty good, but at least three of them are like absolutely stellar fights. Belfort against Johnson, it's just unbelievable fight. You look at Rumble Johnson, he's moving up from welterweight. Apparently, he used to cut like sort of the best part of 4 stone to get down to welterweight. He's moving up, he's a dangerous wrestler. So we all want to see whether he's going to like, what he's going to be like up at middleweight, whether he's going to really fulfill what it's all about. You got Vitor with his fast hands, short boxing. So it's something I've been changing my mind about all week. Beginning of the week, I've been thinking Vitor with his experience, with his fast hands, is going to be able to step in, deal with him. But then as the week's gone on, you think about Johnson, like he's going to be taking him down. He's going to have the power to get in there, really do some damage if he can like get hold of him. And it's a real pick and fight. I think it's a great piece of matchmaking.
Drake, do you think this is going to be Belfort's last chance? I mean, obviously he's getting up there in years now. He's got a lot of wear and tear on his body. Is this his last chance for another shot at the title?
I think the middleweight division is, just stockpiled at the moment because of Anderson Silva being so dominant. So, yeah, pretty much. Anthony Johnson has a chance to really make a name for himself more than he did in the welterweight division. Think about Dan Hardy versus Anthony Johnson, and that's how I think it's going to go. Mm-hmm. With Vitor being a little bit more dangerous on the ground, but Anthony Johnson's such a big guy, he's just going to smother Vitor.
Obviously, Vitor is going to be training on the Ultimate Fighter opposite Wanderlei Silva. Do the UFC want Vitor to win this fight? Do they need him to win this fight for their popularity in Brazil to keep growing as it is?
I don't think so. I think there's a storyline either way. It's like if Vitor wins, he goes in on some momentum, and other than the Anderson Silva fight, the second coming of Vitor Belfort has been a success story, and he's obviously a great name in Brazil. He's got a very high profile, so that'll be good. If he loses, on the other hand, it makes the fight against Wanderlei a lot more competitive. It makes people look at his recent run and think it's all been first round knockouts. Maybe if you take him down to the woodshed, he hasn't really got all that left. So I think it's win-win for the UFC. Vitor wins, they've got something to build on. If Rumble Johnson wins, they've got a new star to push.
Absolutely. Let's move on then. Let's talk about the main event. Obviously, that's the big fight on the card. Jose Aldo versus Chad Money Mendez for the featherweight title. First time a featherweight title bout's headlined a UFC pay-per-view, I think. It's not been a great year, 2011, for the UFC on pay-per-view. This is the first pay-per-view of 2012, and they're starting off with kind of an unknown commodity in Jose Aldo. Can Jose Aldo become the next pay-per-view star for the UFC?
Yes, but in time. I don't think it's going to be now. I think this is going to be a pretty low pay-per-view buy rate, probably one of the lowest of 2012. If when you see stuff like that happen, you usually have a strong fighter headlining it, and then they get the pay-per-view buy rate. I think this is just to introduce Jose Aldo to the crowd, and hopefully has a great showing.
No better place to introduce him than Brazil. We'll maybe come back and touch on that in a second, but I believe we're now being joined by Terry Etim on Skype live from Brazil. Terry, can you hear us?
Yeah, how's it going?
Not bad, Terry. Happy birthday, first of all. You just arrived in Rio. How's everything going over there?
It's going good. We've been in the south of Brazil for 10 days. We just arrived in Rio last night. So everything's going good. The weight cut's going good, and ready to go.
Obviously, you're coming back from a successful return after a long time off with injury. Does it feel good to have that first fight back under your belt now? And how are you feeling momentum-wise going into this next fight?
Yeah, it was great to get back in the octagon and get back to winning ways. It was a long time out, so to get back was good. But I can't dwell on that fight now. The big night Saturday night, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm gonna keep the momentum going and gonna come away with a win.
Yeah, Terry, you and your team Carbon have got a lot of links with Brazil. Has it made it a lot easier for you, like fighting away from home, those links that you've got?
Yeah, I mean, we've I think we're really lucky the way we have got that link. Our coach out here, Marcelo Brigadier, and Clamabo as well, all of our FT, you know, all the guys out here have been great. But that they let us come out here and train with them, so yeah, it's been really helpful.
Terry, during 138 at the press conference, just a post-fight press conference, a lot of journalists were saying, calling you a grappler, which you weren't very happy about. You're fighting Edson Barboza, who is known as a striker. Is this something that excites you as a fighter, the fact that you've got someone who you can go toe-to-toe with in the stand-up?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I come from a striking background myself, and I've got the best striking coach in the world, Colin Erin. So you know, I'm excited for the fight. But now I'm an MMA fighter. You know, you've seen in my past fights, I've got a lot of submission wins as well. So I think that's the main thing, and that's my main goal, to be the best well-rounded MMA fighter. You know, but as you said, it is going to make for a very exciting fight because he is a good striker as well. So you know, I'm excited.
Yeah. After his fight with Ross Pearson, Barboza, before that, he had this reputation that he was going to knock everybody out and storm the UFC. And Ross stood up to him and pushed him back a bit. Is that something you're intending to do, like really stick it to him?
Yeah, I think I think I've got to take the fight to him, and that's what I plan on doing. You know, all my fights, I always look to finish the fights, and this one's exactly the same. As soon as the bell goes, until my arm's raised, I'm going to look on finishing the fight.
Terry, you were out for quite a long time from 2010 to just the rear end of 2011. Is it good to have consecutive fights back to back? Is this something that you've been looking forward to, obviously, for quite a long time?
Yeah, of course. Being out for that long was very hard, and I said as soon as I was back, I wanted to fight as much as I can. So obviously, after the last fight, and now it's only 2 months later, fighting again is great. After the last fight, I was back in the gym on the Monday, so you know, training's gone great and the camp's gone great, and I can't wait to get back in.
Terry, just very quickly before you go, obviously you walk into somebody else's backyard for this fight. How are you kind of preparing for that, and do you think you're going to be distracted by the crowd at all?
No, I'm not going to be distracted at all. You know, even though I'm still young, I've been in the sport a very long time now, and this is my 10th fight in the UFC, and I've fought abroad before. You know, I fought in Vegas, Abu Dhabi, Germany, many other places as well. So I'm 100% ready and 100% focused on the fight.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, Terry. Good luck in your fight this weekend, and we'll have to get you in the studio when you're back in England.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Terry.
Bye.
Good luck, Terry.
Terry Etim there. I mean, obviously, we've got Michael Bisping's on quite a good run in the UFC at the moment. As far as UK fighters go, is Terry Etim maybe right behind him there as most successful British fighter in the UFC at the moment?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've heard people call him the Anderson Silva of the lightweight division. I just think that Terry's unlucky with the injuries he's had. If he hadn't been injured, he could be right up there fighting it with the likes, Gray Maynard, Frankie Edgar, Benson Henderson, Clay Guida.
Absolutely. Okay, we touched on it briefly just before Terry joined us, but going back to the main event, who are you picking for this fight? I mean, we've seen Jose Aldo. He looked like an absolute machine in the WEC. Since he's come to the UFC, some people say it's a step up in competition, some people say it's the bright lights of the octagon. It seems to have affected him somewhat. He's not looked as invincible. And when we've seen him, taking, grappling from guys like Kenny Florian, we're looking at Chad Mendes now, one of the premier grapplers in the division. Is Mendes the guy to dethrone Jose Aldo?
I don't think so. I mean, Mendes is a great wrestler. He's got a fantastic college background. He decisions people. That's his record. You see, he's a dominant wrestler. And people are working on this thing that Hominick had him in a bit of trouble in the final latter rounds and everything. But I see this being a fight that Jose Aldo will win. I mean, once again, weight's an issue. He's been cutting a lot of weight. There's been worries about his gas tank later on in fights. But if you look at the way he fought against his teammate Uriah Faber, like he's on Team Alpha Male with Chad Mendes, he kicked away his explosiveness, he hacked away at his legs, he took that away. I see Jose Aldo staying on the outside, respecting the wrestler, but in the end, I think we're finally going to see those killer knees that took out Swanson. We're going to see them punches that made us all fall in love with him when he was WEC. I think this is going to be his coming out party. He's also now sponsored by Flamengo, like the Rio Football Club. So he's going to be coming out in Rio with the biggest football shirt in the country on. The place is going to go nuts. I think it's going to be a big night for Jose Aldo.
Just very quickly now, before we leave UFC 142, a lot of Brazilian fights on this card. I think there's about 12, 13 Brazilians on this card. Obviously, we're seeing UFC events in Sweden. They're going back to Australia. Do you think this is going to be the trend moving forward now? Cards in different countries, basically stacked with local talent?
Yeah, it has to be. You know, if they want to get the best out of the talent before everyone else does, they have to put on more cards internationally. There are plenty of fighters in the UK, such as, you know, Corey Tate, Ian Martel. You could even possibly put Jimmy Manuwa in there, who, you know, if their contracts are allowed, they'll go and fight in the UFC sooner or later.
Obviously, you know, as I just mentioned, we've seen the UFC in Sweden. They're going to Australia. There's already another show in Brazil confirmed. Is England getting left behind at all?
I think it's inevitable. Dana's been talking this week about China's on the books, Korea's on the books. Down the line, he really wants to go to Paris. Brazil, there's going to be like a season of The Ultimate Fighter in Brazil. We assume that the final of that's going to be in Brazil. So that's a growing economy. They're going to be returning there. So as the sport globalises, obviously we've got the return to Japan and everything as well. We've got to take what we can. You know, I think there'll be at least one UK card this year, but you know, we can't expect them to be coming back every other week as they seem to be doing like sort of a few years ago.
Okay, just very quickly before we end it then, if Chael Sonnen goes to Brazil and fights Anderson Silva, first of all, does he beat him? Second of all, does he get out alive? Very quickly from both of you.
Chael Sonnen loses to Anderson Silva, and I think everyone just like sort of smiles at him and sees him as a bit of a dumb American.
I've got Anderson Silva beating him. Does he get out alive? That remains to be seen.
I'm very firmly on the Chael Sonnen bandwagon, so I'm actually going to say that Chael Sonnen beats Anderson Silva. Whether he gets out of Rio alive or not, I'm not sure. Maybe he'll take the same bus as in the Guerra brothers, try and feed it a carrot. We're not sure.
That's why you're a fool, obviously.
That is why I'm a fool. Anyway, that's all for part one of the show. When we come back in part two, we're going to be checking out the Haywire trailer with Gina Carano, and we're going to be talking to Rosi Sexton about the Cris Cyborg Santos steroid scandal. John's after the break. Welcome back to The Cage on Sports Night Live. In this part of the show, we're going to be talking about women's mixed martial arts, and what better way to start that than with the lovely Gina Carano, who's the star of the new movie Haywire, which is coming out very, very shortly here in the UK. We're going to check out a little bit of a video clip of Haywire now, see what you think.
He said to come pick you up. So can we go, please?
I don't think so.
She's the ultimate assassin. That's why they trained her.
Negotiations broke down. Just need somebody to go in and get the guy.
That's why they trusted her.
I have an assignment. It's like a paid holiday.
You want me to be eye candy?
You guys would be like the perfect couple.
So why did they betray her?
Paul? Is the divorce final?
Paul, you there?
Mallory.
When the Barcelona deal went down, we fix it.
You can tell me right now why you sold me out, or you can tell me when I have my hands around your throat.
His daughter killed a man in cold blood.
Finding the truth.
Should I be nervous?
I'll let you know.
What do you know about her?
She was a Marine. She does something. There must be a reason for it.
Will be her most dangerous mission.
She's a public threat.
What did you do?
I did what I was contracted to do.
Haywire.
That was Haywire with the lovely Gina Carano and a host of Hollywood superstars. Guys, looking good?
As a former film studies student at Kingston University, it looks pretty gnarly. I'd watch it.
You're going to be watching Haywire next week?
I don't really think it's one for me, no. It didn't look like authentic Gina Carano fights anyway, because like...
It's a film.
She didn't have an argument about making weight first before, like, in the cafe.
That's a good point. It's not been the best week for women's mixed martial arts. Obviously, the big story coming out of last week was Cris Cyborg Santos failed drug test after her most recent Strikeforce fight. What were your thoughts when you heard the news? She tested positive for stanozol, I believe it's called. Surprised, not surprised?
Well, if you look at Cyborg's physique, there has been a lot of comment about, well, everyone knew anyway, or everyone suspected. I think the great tragedy is she was the face of like women's mixed martial arts, and she's now under a boss, Dana White and the Zuffa umbrella, who've shown that they're not very keen on women's mixed martial arts. So this might be the excuse that they have to give it the elbow altogether. Strikeforce has been like the pinnacle of women's mixed martial arts. If that goes away, because he's already talked about shutting down the 145 division, then it could be a big setback for women's mixed martial arts. So taking just the personalities out of the equation, it could be really bad for the female sport as a whole.
Okay, well, we've just been joined on Skype by Rosi Sexton. If we're going to talk women's mixed martial arts, probably no better person in the UK to talk to. Rosi, thanks for joining us.
Hi there.
Okay, we're just talking about, obviously, the situation with Cris Cyborg. Obviously, you had an article up earlier in the week, which was very interesting on the subject. Can you give us your basic thoughts on the situation?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate. I think it's premature to say that this is going to damage women's mixed martial arts or female mixed martial arts. I think what Dana White's been saying about the 145 division, that makes sense. To be honest, it wasn't a particularly deep division anyway. It was more a showcase for Cyborg. I think the real action is all at 135 in Strikeforce. And there's a lot of drama going on there at the moment. There's a lot of good fighters, a lot of good personalities. So I'm pretty hopeful that things are going to carry on in a positive direction there. As far as the steroid issue goes, I think this is the tip of a very large iceberg. Like people have been saying, I think it really did come as no surprise that Cyborg's been taking steroids. The big surprise is that she got caught, really, because I think the generally accepted wisdom in mixed martial arts is that unless you're careless or unlucky, it's not really that hard to get away with it. And that, I think, is the big problem. I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Obviously, Rosi, you're a doctor and your opinion is kind of taken quite highly. Once all the drama, as you say, does die down, what needs to be done, really? What can the martial arts community do in order to, A, avoid things like this happening again, and B, just give the fighters and the fans sort of a better understanding of the dangers of steroid use in mixed martial arts?
Well, I think, essentially, we need to make a decision. I think because steroid use is so prevalent amongst mixed martial arts fighters, and I don't think anyone within the scene really denies that seriously. I think we need to make a decision. We need to decide, do we care enough about this issue to make a real effort to get steroids, to get performance-enhancing drugs as a whole out of the sport, or do we not? I mean, people argue that, it would cost too much money, people in charge aren't really that keen to do it, it's not a big issue, fans don't really care, whatever. So I think we need to go one of two ways. Either we're going to do this, and it is going to cost money, and we need to put the effort in, and it needs to become a big issue. Or we need to say, well, we can't do it, we can't get rid of it, so let's make it a level playing field. Let's let fighters use these drugs freely without the stigma of cheating attached. And at the same time, let's have a grown-up, honest discussion about what the risks involved really are, what the side effects are. And whether there is a way to use these in a sensible way so that to minimise those risks.
Cris Cyborg's obviously said that the supplement that she took, which was contaminated, was something that she used to help her lose weight. I mean, as a fighter, you say maybe we should just let people use whatever they want to within reason. Would you be comfortable stepping into the cage with someone who you knew had maybe used something like stanozol to cut weight, for example?
Well, let's start with that. I mean, I'm highly sceptical about that particular statement, but let's leave that aside for now. I think the problem is that fighters are already in that situation. I mean, let me clarify, I'm not advocating steroid use. Personally, I would be very much in favour of an improved standard of testing. But I'm saying that legalising it would be preferable to the situation we've got at the moment, where fighters may be very well aware that an opponent is using drugs, but yet they can't do anything about it. And if they wanted to use them themselves to level the playing field, then they're putting themselves in a position where they're effectively cheating. They're doing something that's against the rules. So that dilemma, I think, is what we need to eliminate.
Rosie, there have been a few fighters who have been caught with, more than a few fighters who have been caught with PEDs during, mixed martial arts' recent boom. How many fighters do you actually think are using performance enhancing drugs to, step their game up?
Obviously, we don't know the exact numbers. There's no evidence, really. I mean, estimates range from a significant minority to almost all, and I think the reality is going to be somewhere in the middle there. I'm not going to put a figure on it. All I'm going to say is that it's widespread.
Yeah, it's like I said, a lot of people have been testing positive, like with very high-profile organisations. Do you think one thing that could be done without like expanding testing anymore is to just say life means life, ban these people and don't let them back? Would that be one way of addressing it?
I don't think just increased penalties on its own is going to be enough to do the job. I think at the moment there's so little confidence that fighters are going to get caught. Fighters are confident that if they do the right things, they cycle it correctly, they take the right masking agents, whatever, they're going to get away with it. And I think that's the problem. Just increasing the penalties on its own, I don't think gets rid of that fundamental issue. And the problem is fighters are naturally risk takers. People who are going to step into that cage anyway, they're already risking injury, they're already risking their careers every time they step in that cage. You've got fighters who've got tens of thousands of dollars riding on the outcome of a fight. The mentality, it's not going to be enough to just increase the penalties and expect that this is going to deter people from taking these drugs, when it might make the difference between them getting to a top level, getting a UFC title, something like that, or being a complete unknown.
Rosie, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, you've got a very big fight coming up in May. We'd love to have you in the studio sometime before that to talk about your fight and how your training's going.
That would be great. I look forward to it.
Thanks a lot, Rosie. Rosi Sexton there with her views on this whole steroid situation. It's an ugly situation, isn't it, if we're honest? Obviously, we've spoken about that, and it's not something that we really want to dwell on. Safe to say, though, that something must be done about this in the future, and hopefully with situations like this we will see positive steps taken. Let's leave that one behind then, and let's move on to a little regular feature we've got around the cage, which is the weekly dream fight. This week we are going to be debating BJ Penn in his prime versus Jose Aldo, who arguably is in his prime right now. Who wins that fight? How do they win it?
BJ Penn. I'm a massive fan of Baby J. In his prime, BJ Penn is unstoppable, and you've got to think, he's fought in 2 weight classes, so they've got to meet somewhere. Jose Aldo will eventually move up to 155, and 155-pound BJ Penn is still one of the most dangerous people in mixed martial arts. The BJ Penn who destroyed Diego Sanchez, the BJ Penn who ripped apart Kenny Florian and made Joe Stevenson into a bloody mess. I'm going to go with BJ.
Mick?
It's got to be BJ. I mean, I assume we're fighting at 155. I can't really see BJ giving up the cakes to get down to featherweight. So Jose moving up, which, as Aundre says, he's almost certainly going to do to have some kind of mega fight in the near future. BJ has got it all. I mean, I was privileged to see him in the flesh when he come over and won the title again at UFC 80 in Newcastle. And it was just great to see a master at work when he absolutely mullered Joe Stevenson, and it were seeing greatness in action. And I was always a bit of a fan, but seeing the man just open up a gash you could get twins out on his forehead and then choke him out as it spurted around, it was why we love this sport. So I will always be a BJ Penn fan. Jose, like I was saying, the old 1-2 on Swanson's head, He's getting there, but at the moment, it's got to be BJ.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're talking about both guys in their primes. I don't really see anyone beating BJ Penn at 155
I don't think Jose Aldo's in his prime yet.
Well, that's a good point as well. You know, who knows what this kid can do? You know, we said before he has looked a little bit more human in recent fights, but you know, maybe that is just octagon jitters. Maybe we're going to see, you know, a new era at 145.
It could be a story.
Jose Aldo taking that forward.
It's a great story. I mean, you know, he was brought up in Manaus in a poor city up the Amazon. He used to like go to the building site with his dad carrying rocks for him as he laboured. He used to sleep in the gym, you know, and like sort of people would like give him food because he was so poor. His scar, I believe, is from his sisters throwing him in the barbecue pit when he was a kid. He's got a tough life. He's a great story. And he's a great fighter. And if he's marketed right, he could be the first featherweight superstar.
Absolutely. Well, that's the end of that one, guys. And that's the end of this episode of The Cage. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.